Welcome to Heart Talks, peeps. Today I'm going to talk about how I discovered my office within. And I know my homies have just been waiting for this show because there was a bunch of us that were introduced to that at the same time. And the way I tell the story is that George Barnard, who lives in Australia, had been given a message by Spirit that he needed to come to the U.S. and teach his workshops on how he helps people discover their Akashic construct within. And that's what he calls it. I call it my office within. Somehow or another, he found my homies in northern Idaho, and he came out there, and he was showing in groups how to do this technique, and everyone kept saying, "Sheila, you got to come to one of these workshops." And I, for some reason, kept hesitating about it and did not participate. Then one day I get a call from my friend Angus and says, "Sheila, George is here at my house. You've got to get here now. This is your chance." And so I'm like, all right, okay, I'll go. So I get over there, and this guy, George Barnard, shows this chart right here. And he says, "I'm going to take you to your favorite place." What he does is he does a guided meditation that takes me into my alpha state. Now, mind you, at the point that I had met George, my hearing had already kicked in, my visions had already kicked in. So I was not new to this level or vibrational level of instruction. And I think I probably held off because, as usual, I wanted to have a private personal session, and that's what I got. That's just the way it worked out. Anyways, he took us into a guided meditation and said to find our most favorite place, which I had a million of them at that time. He said, and then you're going to go over here to this construct. And he was explaining to us that as humans, we are connected to the material world, okay? And because the universe is so big, once we get out of our bodies and get out there, it's so huge, it's kind of overwhelming for the human. And so he designed this perspective or this construct so that as a human, we would feel a little more comfortable and grounded, so that I'm just not flying all over the universe. I needed like my office space, okay? So he designs this vision here where you go into this shower and you shower away all your doubts and fears, okay? Now, whenever I'm just talking about it like this, it's just like, sounds like blah, blah, blah. But when you're down into that alpha state of meditation, now you're getting deeper within. And I got to say that once he brought me to this place, I was shocked to find out that it was already in place. Okay. When he said, okay, inside the construct, we have a desk and a chair so that you can sit and do your work. We've also got a navigation area, and this navigation area has a calendar, a map, a clock. It's got a clock where you can move the time. It's got a globe so that you can see the entire earth. I've got a window door here on mine. Right here is the library where you can find out any information you need. Over here is the stage and an elevator. And this elevator is so that once you get inside your construct, that's where your angels or anybody that you're going to have contact with can come up through the elevator. It was an easier way to adjust to being with other entities, a sort of slowing, this is the reason for this is we want our humans to join us in these multidimensional experiences. And so we're being kind to the humans and giving them, a material world to work with. Right here is my medicine cabinet, which is a shelf that had jars, and every jar had like just this sparkly stuff in it. It was anything that I should ever need, anything would be on this shelf. This door went off to a tool shed that has any tool that you could ever want. Okay. When he brought me down into that alpha state, I went to my beautiful place, and I walked over here to this construct, and much to my surprise, this was already together. Before I had gone in, I was like, well, how am I going to pick a desk? There's a million desks to pick, and what kind of, the details, the human got all detaily. Well, once I got in there, it was already together, which I found absolutely fascinating, which meant to me now that I had already had contact with George before I had met him, and I had already gotten this in place. Now, my first experience in there, I also had already had the vision where the grandmother told me that it was time to become the healer. And I had no idea what that meant, because I was in a network of healers, and there was massage and Reiki people and Qigong people. And, I wasn't any of those. And I didn't even know what it meant what it meant for me that I would be becoming a healer. I was still a little confused about that. But once I got into my construct, I was shown exactly the techniques that I would be using. And that was to bring my people who I was working on into the construct. As I got to know my construct and became very familiar with it, I put a bed right here that had the lights above and below it, and I used that often. For quite a while, I would go in and I would be surprised. I would just allow whoever was going to be in the construct and work from there. And I got to say that the experiences that I had in there were so amazing. That is where I have met other beings, the ones that all are aglow. That is where I have had ceremonies. That's where I meet up with Michael and Saint Germain, and this became my place where all the magic can happen. I had to go into that shower and wash away doubts and fears, because that is what stops me on the outside world is doubts and fears. But once I could get into that energy or dimension where all things are possible, then I was able to do all things possible. There were so many healings that went on in that, in my construct. It was, and all of the healings were so gentle. If guided to get something from that shelf, I would go stand in front of the shelf and I would look at all of the jars, and I would ask which one would be helpful for this person, and it would light up. And so I would take the jar and I would just work my gig in there. Okay. And like I had a desire to do a cruise one time. So I went in there and set up my desk, and I saw my cruise ship. And it was like a year and a half later before we actually took that. But, that's where I do all my manifesting. And after, a couple of years, my human kind of got used to the gigs that we were working. And so I didn't actually have to use the materialistic part of the construct. I could just go within to that alpha state and start working. But that, for a couple of years, that was my training field. That was my opportunity. And it also was what helped me to start doing intentional astral travels, because now that I'm in there and I'm more involved with the universe. At first it was just, how when you're first waking up, how those wonderful things happen, how you get your first vision or you get your first download or you get your first message, with your hearing. It's, those things, when they first happen to you, it's so exciting and you want them to happen again and you try to make it happen. It doesn't happen, but as my vibration raised, as I kept practicing more with the healers on the outside, I was able to get even better with my practice on the inside. And this is how I also learned to, anytime I'm doing anything, you want to do it within first. You want to do it with your thoughts first. Okay. So in here, this is where I can go in there and I'm free from the clutters of life. Okay. And I'm free from the doubts and fears, and I can get myself clear. Now, meditation has always been, the answer for just about everything, to be able to get yourself down into that alpha state where that makes all this manifesting possible. Okay, just like whenever I was breathing in a lease to buy my house, okay, I was essentially in the vibration of my construct, which frees me to go to all those timelines. Okay, that's how I learned to free myself to work on the grid systems and in those timelines and in the highways between dimensions and all those places, because I practiced first in my office within. I had to become comfortable in there. I had to practice in there, and it has probably been, it is what helped me to become then intentional with my astral travels, where I could intentionally go somewhere and luckily, have memories of it when I came back. I've boarded ships from my construct. The healing practices has been probably the most rewarding. I had a friend who was going into a quadruple heart bypass surgery, and he asked if I would be his angel during this operation. So I went to the hospital, and incredibly ironically, I was given a private room to go wait which I had never done that. As a caregiver, I've been, to the hospital a million times to be with people, but I was never given a private waiting room before. And I also had a nurse who was calling me with every part of this process, which I hadn't exactly had that before either. And so I knew exactly what was going on. Well, there came the point where they were going to be undoing him from all of the equipment. And there was that moment where his heart had to do that first beat again off the machines. And I went into my construct, and I had my hands around his heart, and then some beautiful glowing hands held my hands, and we gave that heart a pump, and it started beating again. Now, when his operation was over, the doctor came into that waiting room, and he asked me, can I ask you, what's your relationship with Fred? And I said, well, my husband and him work together. He goes, no. I want to know what your relationship with him is. And I said, well, he asked me to be his angel. And he goes, I knew something was going on the whole time I was doing that surgery. He says, something was different about the whole thing. I've never had anything go so smooth. And he says, I felt a presence. And he says, I want to thank you for that experience, because I've never had it before. I always knew that I'd heard that it could happen, but I never knew. And that was probably one of my most rewarding healing sessions that I ever had, because not only because I was acknowledged by that doctor, but we were working together, all of us. And then to have him realize that, it was just an incredible experience to have. And it was because, that I was already very comfortable in my office, and there are, this happened years ago. There's so many experiences that I could just go on forever. But I also wanted you guys to know that all these shows that I've been doing, everything that I've been talking about, has filtered through my office. Okay. And I encourage that you find your office within, and you probably already have. Sometimes I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here, because I know so many of you are already on board. But for those who may not have found your office within, I really do encourage you to make an attempt to go deep within and find yourself comfortable within yourself and in your passions for your life. You can use it for anything. I'm going to put the information where you can get the CDs that George put out, and I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've gotten a little bit out of it, and I do really encourage you to find your office within and start doing your thoughts in there first, and then manifest outward. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you all for all your comments and your likes. It's been an incredible year, and I appreciate all your attention. From my heart to yours, namaste.